Hi, I'm Zane with Zane Engineers Life. So let's continue the series. Friday's story, I think we're on episode 3. So I've told you several stories about my co op experiences, about messing things up and causing a lot of problems and messing with my boss. So now it's time to tell some stories about some of my co ops. And I'll start with a real simple one. So at one point in my career, I worked for a company that did a lot of inspections and engineering on big, huge vessels and piping and tanks. We went into paper mills and petrochemical plants and did real complicated systems and looked at various vessels and pieces of equipment to help keep them running and inspect them and maintain them and do the mechanical integrity on them. So, as part of that, one of the things that we used a lot of times when we were in the field, and remember, I'm really old, so this is long before smartphones. In reality, the phones we had at the time were the old Nokia brick. Remember the phone that was basically indestructible? And I know that's the case because I personally dropped one about 20 feet onto a concrete floor and went down and picked up the phone and actually continued the conversation. Anyway, so we had Nokia brick phones. We didn't have smartphones. We had no internet access while we were out in the field. And even if we did, we were out in the middle of nowhere, New Jersey or Pennsylvania or Florida or Georgia. We're out literally in the middle of nowhere. So one of the things we needed while we were there was a copy of the code books. And these code books came from various sources, ASME, API, those kind of things. Well, one of my bright ideas was, you know what? We travel a lot, we're on planes a lot, and we need these code books. And to take all of them was a stack of 3-ring binders about this big. So there's no way we can do that every time we fly out to places. And we can't always get out on these Nokia brick phones. So it's going to be hard to call back to home office to get questions answered. So my bright idea, tell you what, I'll have one of the co-ops take all these code books, and even though we're probably breaking some copyright law, I'm going to have them make copies of them. But not just copies, I want reduced copies. Because what I want to do is I want to take all these code books and condense them down into the smallest 3-ring binder that they make. So I charge one of my co-ops for this, explain it to them, reasons why, what we're going to do with it, and all those things. Well, he's relatively new and a really hard worker and a great kid. Aaron, you're a great dude. And he starts to work on this project. So he's gone for a long time. And I mean, I don't know if it was days, a week, whatever it was. Dude's working really hard. And what he's having to do is he's making copies, but he can't just make copies, he has to make reductions. And then a reduction of the reduction and a reduction of the reduction. So he's probably made 5, 6, 7, 8 copies of a single page to get it down to the right size. Now think about this for a minute. So he's got thousands of pages. He's made 5,000 copies to try to get it down to the right size. He's gone to a paper cutter. He's cut all these things. He's found a way to hole punch them at a weird hole punch dimension. And he's got it all together. And he's made this super cool, awesome, 3-ring bound, super small code book, right? Perfect for use in the field. And I'm standing there one day, and we're in a group of us engineers, and we're talking through some project. And Aaron comes up, excuse me, my co op comes up super proud. Hey, Zane, I got your binder, everything set, here you go. So he's put blood, sweat, tears, everything he's got into making this. And I take it, and I literally drop it out of the air. And I look like I'm kind of falling, but in reality, I'm more kind of drop kick slash punt this carefully made 3-ring binder out into the hall. Paper goes flying everywhere. Mass pages in all directions. The binder came open. Everything's everywhere. And it's interesting. My co-op was a really calm, level-headed, great dude, really upright, very religious. Dad was a preacher, great guy. And he told me years later that at that moment he actually considered becoming a murderer. I had taken this thing that had taken his whole existence and being, and I had literally drop kicked it into the hall, and paper had gone everywhere. Well, back up and think about that for a minute. Why did I do that? Remember, I said we needed this in the field. Well, in the field, a lot of times you're 20 feet off the ground in a pipe rack. And if that binder were to happen to drop or hit something and come open, and paper literally went everywhere in a paper mill, well, now I've completely screwed up their process and I might shut down the line for the whole day. So, what I had done is basically field test it before it got to the field. And here's the moral of the story and the point to this: it really doesn't matter how much time and effort and energy and soul and existence and engineering and know how, it doesn't matter how much of that you put into something. If you can't use it in the real world, it's useless. And if it's useless, then we didn't provide any value. So I want you to think about that as you go forward. When you're designing things, ask yourself, how's this going to be used in the field? What you don't want to do is you don't want to send a guy 100 feet in the air with 7 different wrenches, right? Why can't all the bolts be one size, even if they're a little bit oversized? You don't want to put a guy out in an area and not have him grounded in a spot where he might have electricity in the area. What you want to do is you want to think about how things are going to occur in the real world and how they're going to occur and be used, and make sure you design for those. So back to the binder. Great idea, great effort, great prototype, failed miserably in initial testing. What we did later is we ended up making those sheets and laminating them and taping them and making them in a way where the binder stayed closed no matter what. So we actually had a great design 2.0, but we had a lot of anger when we did the prototype test of design 1.0. I apologize to my co-op many, many times for that, but at the time, it was something that needed to be done to make sure that it worked. And I hope that it actually helped him in his career later. And I think that it did, because now he's out teaching other people how to do engineering. So our lesson for the day and our moral for the day is, as an engineer, you need to make sure it works in the real world, and you need to think about how disaster can strike and how to prevent it. So that's what I have for you today. I'm Zane with Zane Engineers Life, and we'll make you better.